Hello, my name's SuAndi, and I'm here to talk about my poetry collection titled Leaning Against Time. I'm a performance poet, essentially, which is what makes this collection perhaps a little bit different from other publications by CARCANET, in that the pieces in the book were not selected by me, but by John, with approval, I suppose, by Michael. I'm hoping that this little video will tempt you to buy the book, and I hope enjoy it. So little background information. My name is SuAndi. I'm from Manchester. I'm very much from Manchester. I am the second child of my parents, my late brother Malcolm, known locally as Assassin, and my mum, who originally was called Peggy, and then went posh, became Margaret. And in fact, I was told not to call her Mam after a certain age, I can't remember the age, and she became my mum. And my father, a Nigerian called Thomas Jabus. There is a little rhyme that sums up what I was like as a child. There was a little girl, had a little curl right in the middle of her forehead. And when she was good, she was very, very good. And when she was bad, she was horrid. I wasn't a nice child. I was a pretty child. I was quite popular, but I wasn't too nice. I was a bit of a snoop. You couldn't leave me in anybody's house. I'd be in the drawers. I wanted to know more about people's lives. And in a way, as I've grown older, not too old, I've realised those are the voices that I try to capture in my writing. The poetry that's in this book spans many years. And when John first gave me his selection, I couldn't remember half the pieces. And some of them was like, oh my God, no, take that out. So naive. But I like voices. And when I first started to perform, it was important for me that the audience could see past me being a black woman. So some of my voices are white women, men of any race, children, the unheard. Because I was quite conscious in school growing up that there were people around, including myself, who people weren't interested in, but had something to say. We cannot all be heroes and sheroes. Ordinary people have such extraordinary lives, and yet we rarely get a chance to hear those lives. People might say, oh, we've got reality TV. That's rubbish. That's pretense. Even today, if you watch me in a crowd or in a restaurant, my ears are always tuned in to the next table, sometimes even a table far removed from me. The snoop of me continues, and I'm inspired by that. I also write poems taken from a line in a film or a sentence in a book, and I acknowledge that. I always try to acknowledge my inspiration, although I'm not going to say this poem comes from two people talking on the bus or anything like that. For example, there's a poem in the book about singing Sinatra. I was having dinner after I'd given a lecture at the university with a couple of members of staff, all women, and one woman talked about her son. And as soon as she started talking, I knew I had this poem. I remember at one point wanting to say, shut up, because I was writing in my head. I write in my head the majority of the time, and those become performance pieces. Pieces that I write to paper, well, I never remember them for one. And they rarely are included when I'm performing. I'm just thinking now too, I don't want to make myself seem illiterate in any way, but I like performance because you can edit, you can make changes. No one can go back to the book and say, well, you didn't say that bit, or that bit's not right, or the grammar's wrong in it. The words float in the air. And hopefully the listener isn't distracted by doorbells or somebody eating crisp beside them. That's quite possible in a performance. When I first started writing, Well, when I first started writing, it was like most people. I wrote love poetry. Nobody loves me, nobody understands me. Why did you leave me? I didn't keep them under my bed. I think that's a what's it? What's the word for that? A myth, a global myth or something. But yeah, they were quite indulgent. When I began to perform, that was after watching members of the original Identity Workshop at Culture Word. I was doing a fashion show for them, and I saw them got paid, and I thought, wow, you can get paid for talking. I'm half Scouse and half Nigerian. Talking it's in my genes, it's in my blood. And so I began to perform. Helped initially or guided, not just by the members of Black Scribe, which was the first women's poetry group, but also Lemsiso, who I worked with. A lot of the early work was about South Africa. Apartheid was still there. Nelson was still in prison. It was a life that we didn't really understand. But our anger and our pain, we had empathy for what was going on with our sisters and brothers over there. And we tried to capture that in our writing. Speaking for myself personally, not very well. But it was a journey we had to go on. I think sometimes you look away from your personal situation before you look at what's happening at home. And I don't think I wanted to deal with racism in the UK. And it was here, it was blatant. But it never became so apparent to me until I became an artist, a poet. In the arts, I realised that patronism was a devil in disguise of helpfulness. That people who said they wanted me to speak, not me, the collective me of Black voices, didn't want us to speak too loud or with too much honesty. It's all there in the book. I expanded my writing to the ordinary. I've always said I want my performances to seem as though we're having a gossip over the garden fence, that I'm in a conversation with people. When people say to me afterwards, I felt as though you were talking to me, I'm like, wow, it works. I'm delighted. I don't need a theatre full of thousands of people. I want it to feel like a small conversation. And I hope that conversation comes out from the pages of this book. There's lots of themes. Love is there. Family. Position of women. The issues of being Black in this country and being Black globally. But not self-pity. I don't do self-pity. In fact, people meet me sometimes and they'll say to me, oh, you're SuAndi. And other people meet me and say, wow, you're SuAndi. That first way my name is said, I know that they've also almost been pre-warned about me. I hope you can read the book without taking that warning on, and just enjoy the work for what it is. I am not a female Shakespeare. I don't, and this is not modesty. I'm never going to be the greatest poet in the world. These are very simple gatherings of words together in a way that I hope is musical to you, the reader. Now, on the point of music, the second half of the collection is the libretto of Mary Seacole, the Black Jamaican nurse who went to the Crimea to support the soldiers. And I've told this story before. When Larry Coke, the director, asked me to write the libretto, I didn't know what one was, didn't know how to spell it, couldn't look it up. And then eventually I understood what he wanted me to do. And I thought I got the music and wrote the words on top easy. I was horrified to find out that I had to write the words first and then it went to composer. The first submission I sent was awful. And my good friend Greg Edwards, the DJ, said, just write the way you would write normally. And in that way, I hope I captured not just the voice of Mary Seacole, but the soldiers, the reporter, all of the cast. And as I watched that performance in Covent Garden when we opened to a sellout week, I looked down on the stage and thought, wow, I wrote that. And in a way, I forgot I'd written it because all these voices came through to me and spoke to me. So again, I hope that happens to you when you read the book. I think CARCANET have put so much trust in me with this collection. It's huge. It's worried me so much. And when Michael first showed me the poems he'd picked out, who'd never seen me perform, although I was worried, I also thought, wow, maybe he can hear my voice or the voices that I've put forward here. We were originally going to call the collection Anonymous, I think, but it sounded like Billy No Mates, and I didn't get here on my own. Not just the team at CARCANET that selected the work and helped with the design, and I drove the designer mad, but people who've helped me through my career, who have helped guide me, assisted me, helped correct my bad English and grammar, punctuation flaws. Leaning Against Time was my idea. The poem was already written, and I've always felt in a way that I've been waiting to, not to be seen and heard, but waiting to be considered, not valued, considered. Yes, I hope that you will buy the book and consider it money well spent. If you don't come back to me, tell CARCANET, of course, but that you will consider the voices in the book worthy of your ear, worthy of your time. That very time I'm leaning on. Because the future has to look back in order to make tomorrow better. Thank you.